Bristol, Connecticut is best known for being the headquarters for ESPN, but right down the street is a small amusement park called Lake Compounce. It only has a few rides, but it's on the map for having the 5-time Golden Ticket Award winner for Best Wooden Coaster, Boulder Dash. I've wanted to ride this for almost 2 decades, and I finally got out to this park this past summer. This is my experience at Lake Compounce on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018. We woke up the morning of the 18th in Allentown since we had just hit Dorney Park the night before, and we didn't want to get to Lake Compounce too early since we wanted to take advantage of Quassy's $15 unlimited rides after 5 p.m. deal, and we didn't think that we would need that much time at Lake Compounce. So midway through the drive, I decided it would be a good idea to change plans to hit Lake Compounce for a few hours and then finish the day off at Six Flags New England, and then split the next day between Six Flags New England and Quassy, so that was the new plan. We set out on the 3.5-hour drive to Connecticut in the morning to get to Lake Compounce around 1 o'clock. What started out as excitement turned into horror as Boulder Dash was not open. This is really the only reason people come here, and the ride was not open. The employee at the front of the entrance did say that maintenance was working on it and they were hoping to get it open later in the day, but they weren't sure. So this at least gave me some hope, but my mood was taken from a 10 to about a 3, and with that we started hitting some other rides that were open. We started with a station weight ride on Phobia Fear Coaster, which is the newest coaster at the park, and a Skyrocket 2 with lap bars. This was my second Skyrocket 2 since I had already ridden Superman Ultimate Flight, but it's still a really good smooth ride. We got one more ride on this before going to the only other coaster that was open. This Vekoma Boomerang provided some good views of the park, but that's about it. We also rode the giant wheel just to get some pictures. Wildcat's the 91-year-old PTC Woody that serves as the centerpiece of the park. But that was not open either, and I heard this ride has a lot of downtime and that it's not very good, so I wasn't too surprised or worried about it being closed. We spent a couple hours here and Boulder Dash was still not open, so we decided to abandon the plan to hit Six Flags New England that night and go back to the original plan to hit Quassy, which is about 30 minutes south, and then come back to Lake Compounce later to see if Boulder Dash would reopen. We went to McDonald's on the way to Quassy, and then I realized that you could actually buy ride tickets rather than an all-day pass. So we blew off the 5 p.m. timeline and bought one ride on Wooden Warrior, which was $5. The line was actually somewhat long for Wooden Warrior, so we waited the 15 minutes to get the back row, which was a pretty solid ride, but the air time was not as strong as I thought it would be. We got souvenirs and pictures and wound up being there for only about 30 minutes. So as we were driving back, we were talking about what we would do if Boulder Dash never opened. We decided we would make a plea with guest services to see if we can get a comp ticket for the next day, ride it quickly, and then continue on to Six Flags New England. After all, this was one of my bucket list coasters, and I probably would not be back in Connecticut for a very long time. So we got back to Lake Compounce around 6 o'clock, 2 hours before the park closed, and Boulder Dash was open. It was only running one train and the line was about 30 minutes, but I didn't care. I was most nervous about the ride breaking down before I could get on it. We ended up riding it 3 times over the last 2 hours, and the ride wasn't all that great, but I'm extremely thankful that I was able to experience it. We were also told earlier that Wildcat should reopen later in the day, but it never did. So as the park was closing, we got our souvenirs and we left to Six Flags New England for the next day. Here are some thoughts on the park. I will probably not be visiting this park anytime in the near future, unless they get some major new ride. For a small park, I was also surprised that they charged $12 for parking and the tickets through my work were over $40. That's kind of a lot for a park like this. When I left in the middle of the day, I had spent all that money to ride a cloned Skyrocket 2 and a cloned Boomerang. I felt extremely fortunate that they actually reopened Boulder Dash over the last few hours of operation, since a lot of parks would have just kept it closed for the rest of the day. I don't know if the parks take into account people who may be traveling thousands of miles and spending one day there, but in this case their hard work paid off for me. They don't get new coasters often. Phobia just opened in 2016 and that was their first coaster since Boulder Dash in 2000. I think that a great path forward would be to RMC Wildcat. I don't know how easy or possible it would be to RMC a coaster that's almost 100 years old, but this coaster is universally hated, and this would add another coaster for a cheap price that would put this park back on the map as a destination for coaster enthusiasts. I'm sure most enthusiasts have made their way to this park for Boulder Dash, but most have not found the need to come back since. So here's the final ride count. 3 on Boulder Dash, 2 on Phobia, and 1 on Zoomerang. And we also got 1 on Wooden Warrior at Quassy. The biggest surprise is that they actually opened Boulder Dash late in the day. Even though this day was pretty stressful, because they did this, it saved a huge headache dealing with guest services and trying to split time with our one day at Six Flags New England the next day. The biggest disappointment was Boulder Dash itself. It was pretty rough, and it didn't have the airtime I expected. So even though I enjoyed it for its length and its setting, it wasn't the great Woody that it was hyped up to be. So that's it for Lake Compounce. Let me know if you visited this park in the comments below and what your impression was. Also be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys all next time.